Slightly odd. Okay, not sure what's going on there. Anyway, good morning, everyone. My name is Anita Day. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm chair of Worcester Acute Hospitals NHS Trust. I'd like to welcome you to our meeting of the board in public on Thursday, the 11th of May. It's lovely to see members of the board, our guests for today's meeting, our partners in Healthwatch, and anyone, welcome also to anyone who's joining us via YouTube. As you know, it is our custom to start each meeting where possible with a story from either a patient, a staff member, sometimes a staff network. These are really important, and I think many trusts do this, and one of the obvious reasons is really clear. It gives us an understanding of the experience of those who experience our services or who help us deliver them, and helps us understand what we're doing well, what we could do better. But I think for us at this trust, there's an additional importance to it. As you know, our signature behaviours that we live by include a really important one about listening, learning and leading. And this is a really tangible way of demonstrating our focus on that. There's also, and this particular story is a great example, another behaviour about working together and celebrating together. And as I hope will become clear from this story today, we have every reason to celebrate as well. I'd like to welcome Jess, who is a midwife in our team. But before that, I'll hand over to Jackie to introduce the story. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, and I'd really like to thank Jess for stepping in due to unexpected an issue we had with regards to our patient story, but hopefully we will be having that again soon. As always, we've come from very busy mornings, I'm sure all of us, and very busy roles to join this important meeting. But I'd just like to urge you to put all of that behind you so that we can get into that space to sort of listen with fascination. As you said, Anita, to hear, where the situation was, what we've learned from it and how we can celebrate some of those successes. So more ado, I'll hand over to Jess, who's actually going to tell you the real experience from a staff perspective. Jess, welcome.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Jess Thompson. I'm the preceptorship lead midwife for the trust. It's a pleasure to be here. I've got a little presentation actually that I'm just going to share, so just bear with me. See if I can get this to work. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, thanks, Jess.
Perfect. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the journey of preceptorship within midwifery and how that's kind of made a difference within our trust for the newly qualified midwives that are coming through. So just a little bit of background wise. So I actually volunteered to do the preceptorship lead role about 6 years ago after my own experience of preceptorship within this trust. When I initially did it, there wasn't much of a structured support available to me as a newly qualified midwife. So I felt that it was important that actually if we developed the package, then we could kind of create that support. So initially, once I'd volunteered about 6 years ago, I think I got allocated probably about a day a month, or like kind of did it in my own time really alongside my full-time clinical responsibilities. So it was quite a big task to undertake initially. And I did that for a few years as and when I could, kind of seeing through the newly qualified midwives and trying to develop the package. But as you can imagine, that was quite challenging. Excuse me. And then as of January last year, there was some funding that became available, and actually we managed to get a dedicated job description for this specific specialist role of preceptorship lead under full-time hours, which is great. And I think there was like a recognition really that there was an increased demand of newly qualified midwife support, and actually a realisation that kind of for successful retention of junior midwives, we needed like a comprehensive package. So you can see on here at the moment, so I've been in post for 16 months probably, as a full-time post, and currently as we speak I've got 23 newly qualified midwives within the trust under preceptorship for maternity, 5 specifically under a continuity model, 1 within a community model, and 17 who are based within the unit on a rotational basis. And we've had quite a large recruitment drive over the past 12 to 18 months, obviously with the maternity staffing crisis that we have been under. It's been really important that we've actually done that recruitment drive and have a robust package to offer them as they're coming through for that transition. So when we have recruited in the past, what we found that actually the majority of people we are recruiting are newly qualified staff, meaning the skill mix is quite affected on the shop floor. So that's why it was really important that we actually had a very specific, robust package for these girls coming through. And it was really important for that kind of support and integration into the team. So as you can see there, those are the people that I oversee at the moment. And then since being in post, I did 13 progressions to Band 6 last year, and 9 progressions have already been completed this year so far, and that's kind of across both a continuity and unit-based model, which I will go into after. So that's a little bit of background. The intention kind of overall when I took on the role and within the job description was actually to work with the newly qualified midwives and other members of the clinical workforce to kind of improve the quality of the package. So it was about identifying the gaps to kind of ensure that there was a robust process. And the evidence a year later to retain staff and promote the confidence and competence is kind of coming to fruition now. So we're actually seeing the benefit of that, which is really great. So this next slide kind of just does a little overview of the framework that we have for both models. So we actually have 3 different models for preceptorship. We have a rotational basis, which I've kind of discussed, and then we have a continuity basis and also a community element, which is quite a new development actually. So just as a little brief overview of the rotational basis, all the frameworks that we have kind of start with an induction academy week, so that allows for peer support, particularly if we've got any external students come in, but they can be integrated into the team, and you've got peer support from internal and external students that have then qualified. And it also allows for like training allocation and preparation for clinical care prior to their supernumerary period, so which we've started doing probably around September last year, so that's had really good feedback. The rotation that we have here is kind of evidenced in this framework, and it kind of covers all areas of the service. So we've got delivery suite, community, postnatal and antenatal ward. So they rotate across the whole of the spectrum, and they have a supernumerary period kind of prior to that rotation. And that's really vital for like building that foundation and the integration into the team. By doing a rotation across all of the spectrum, what we're finding is that actually we're creating or supporting the development of all-round practitioners, particularly from the start of their career. So actually that's really important then going forward, that everyone is feeling confident and competent in all areas. What we found was that we did an adaptation from the previous model to kind of we did like a supernumerary and then a rotation in that specific area, and it meant that the newly qualified midwife could focus on one area at a time, because previously what we were finding was that because they'd done supernumerary everywhere, that they were actually being moved consistently to meet needs of the service rather than kind of focus on one area at a time. So that's kind of how it looks from a rotational element, just as a brief overview. And then the continuity element here is quite a new development over the past year, which we've worked really hard on. So as we're kind of leading within the region around continuity, because we've got the most amount of teams at the moment, it's really vital to have that specific preceptorship pathway for those newly qualified midwives who go straight out from qualification into a continuity model. So what we found is that, I'll go over the support a little bit on the next slide, but the pathway that we've put in place specifically for the continuity newly qualified is that they're having a protected supernumerary time, a little bit like the unit, but they're doing it across both areas. So they're doing an inpatient supernumerary period and also a continuity supernumerary period. And that again kind of creates that foundation for them and that integration. We have a maximum of 3 newly qualified midwives per team. So that makes sure that there's like a senior buddy support, and they have buddy meetings on a 1 to 2 weekly basis, dependent on kind of what they need. So it's very individualized. But that was kind of developed off the back of the feedback from newly qualified, and they found that they were quite worried about the safety netting of women and if they'd missed anything. So actually those buddy meetings will allow kind of that support and that safe environment to discuss those cases. They also have a bit of a reduced caseload initially, and that allows and creates time for newly qualified midwives to identify their own needs and gaps, and that allows them to then seek those opportunities and experiences that they need to kind of develop that all-round practitioner skills. Let's have a little see what else we've got. So another element of this pathway here is they have the unit days, which are kind of consistent exposure to the inpatient setting. So yes, they have on calls, but if they're not called out for like a 2-week period for whatever reason, then actually the anxiety builds up about coming onto delivery suite. So by having a consistent exposure on a weekly basis, we're finding that it reduces the anxiety and helps with their kind of competency achievement. And then also I work quite closely with the continuity lead, and we do like monthly drop-in sessions and meetings with each newly qualified in a continuity model to make sure that that support network is in place for them. So we've actually built a really robust continuity support pathway there. This next little bit just covers about the support. So the support network here is one of the most important parts, and actually it's kind of what students are looking for when they're coming to join our trust. So it's really vital for that retention as they kind of feel valued and respected from this element. Some of the improvements that we've kind of done over the past 16 months have looked at lots of pastoral support. So the newly qualified will come to me with any sort of concerns or worries. So that's like a big part of my role. I also do direct clinical supervision. So I carry a bleep, and if newly qualified need any sort of support at all, then actually I can offer that and do observation of any clinical skills, support with any decision making, prioritization, and especially like time management. So anything that they feel worried about, they'll bleep me and they can ask a question, or I can go onto the unit and support them. So they've got that extra element of support, especially if the acuity is high on the unit. We're also looking at the moment about the team buddy system. So that's under development as we speak. So it's looking at creating a network of support of midwives within the direct clinical setting to kind of bridge that gap, specifically if I'm not there, that actually they've got other people that they can go to alongside the team support at the bottom there. So line managers, matrons and PMAs if they're needed. And another big element that we've also developed over the last year or so has been peer preceptorship, which is like a topic-based drop-in session. So the topics are chosen by the newly qualified, and it looks at like education and opportunities for discussion. So it's like talking about shared learning experiences and creates that safe space for them to discuss any concerns that they might have. So that is a really massive part of the preceptorship package that we offer. And this is the last little bit here, but it looks at some of the keys of success. So you've got there about creating the vision, which is what we did initially, the communication across all the working platforms, including the divisional support, an understanding of newly qualified midwives' needs and expectations, and that was kind of grasped through surveys and feedback. And a lead individual to coordinate the development and oversight of the programme, which of course I have been in post for the last 16 months, so that's really helped to just coordinate all of that. Over the past 16 months we've found that actually all of these keys of success have been evidenced in the fact that we haven't lost any of the newly qualified midwives since being in post. So we've kind of had 100% retention rate of all the newly qualified midwives who've progressed through preceptorship, which is amazing. And there's some feedback here that has kind of been obtained through the surveys that I've undertaken, and it looks at, well, it validates the work that's been done, and it kind of provides and shows that actually we're providing the newly qualified with the tools that they need to kind of flourish within this environment. So that's kind of an overarching thing as to what's been happening at the moment. I'll stop sharing, so bear with.
Jess, thank you very much. That's lovely. And I mean, I think any of us that have been on the board for any length of time know that 16, 18 months ago, our retention and staffing levels in midwifery were absolutely, you've made some massive progress, and I'm sure your preceptorship model is part of that. I don't know whether you or whether Justine wants to come into the bit you haven't mentioned here is the recent news about the national recognition of this programme. I don't know whether you or Justine or Jackie would like to tell the board about that.
Jess, do you want to just talk about that specifically? Because I think what's really important is, and I think Jess brought it out in her presentation, there are 3 bespoke pathways, whether you want to do your rotation within the unit, continuity or community. And I think you'll all recall when the Ockenden reports were first launched, particularly Ockenden 1, there was lots of questions around whether newly qualified midwives should be in the community setting at all. And I think this programme really does demonstrate how you can safely support that group of staff in that environment, and testament to Jess to develop that programme, and it was recognised by the RCM. Do you want to just talk about the document itself, Jess, and who's behind that?
Yeah, so the RCM, so Caitlin Wilson obviously kind of works alongside the RCM, and she approached me about talking about the pathway that we provide for continuity, newly qualified, and how important it is, and the robustness of our package that we're offering, and how actually it has been working for the past 2 years or a little bit longer, especially now we've refined it. So I wrote a little piece just to explain what we offer as part of that continuity model, and that was recognised within the RCM handbook for preceptorship.
Fabulous. Thank you. Jackie.
Yeah, and thank you, Jess, very much for that. I think the one thing for me, and just as a reflection, is the real importance that the staff member, Jess, in this case, her experience of preceptorship and how that then has informed how she has gone through and led a programme is a key message for us, and how important it is that we get that staff experience element right from the very beginning, because actually you can then see how actually a key message about how we support talent. We help use people's experiences in our own development and transformation of services. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Jackie, and absolutely agree. Simon.
Thanks, Jess, and nice to see you again. I know our paths crossed briefly when I was still the maternity lead for the board. Congratulations on all that. But if I can just reflect on my experiences when I was the maternity safety champion, it was palpable when you walked into the unit if staffing numbers were not right. You could feel if we'd been pulling people here, there and everywhere and we weren't quite in the place we should be. And the fact that you're retaining our newly qualified is so important, because that just gives us the proper staffing numbers that we need. I know there are still challenges there, but more power to your elbow, because hanging on to newly qualifieds, developing them, giving careers with us is so important for them, but for us and particularly for our mums and their families. So it's just great to see you again, and congratulations. And you've obviously been very busy since I've not been around.
Thanks, Simon. Mel.
I just wanted to say how proud I am to sit and listen to Jess, because Jess was actually my student in the community for over 3 years, and to see her grow and home grow like this is absolutely phenomenal, because we've nurtured her all through, and look how well she's doing. So I'm really proud, Jess, to see you today doing that.
Thanks, Mel. I'll take Tony, and then I'll probably come to Sue if she as our current maternity champion, whether she wants to comment at the end. But Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Jet. Sounds like a great success. I'm really impressed. You mentioned it's a comparatively new project, so my question is around funding. Is this permanently funded now? This isn't just a temporary project, is it? This is now a permanent feature for the trust? Thank you.
Yeah, it is a permanent fixture for the trust. It's kind of been recognised nationally that actually this is a really important part of the governance structure. It's being discussed in Ockenden as well. So yeah, it is a permanent fixture, yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Sue, did you want to come in and comment?
No, I mean, words fail me actually, unusually. It's a fantastic endeavour. And this must be just about, in the history of midwifery, the hardest time to make a decision to become a midwife and then stick at it with the spotlight that is on them and the pressures and the scrutiny and our patients' increasing demands of us. And to be able to retain your midwives, making this a happy place to work. I mean, what is there to say? It's fantastic. Thank you, Jess. I'll maybe see you on Monday.
Absolutely, Sue. And yeah, I can only echo. I don't see any more hands. I can just to wrap this up, just echo all of that. I think 100% retention at a time when so many units around the country, and that is not their experience. And indeed, it wasn't our experience only a matter of 18 months, 2 years ago. So I think it's clearly what you are doing is working. I think to see a written document by the Royal College of Midwives that talks about what we're doing at Worcester Acute as being a national case study, and I think there was even a written bit by one of our midwives actually talking about her own experience there. I think it was the single largest case study actually in the document, I think, from memory. So really wonderful to get that national recognition for the work that you and all the team are doing in midwifery. And we've seen it in our monthly, the sort of the safe staffing and reports that Justine brings us, that we've seen a palpable change, and it's been lovely to see. So thank you very much, Jess, for sharing this with us. I hope board will agree that this is absolutely something where we did listen, learn, and lead, and we have now got reasons to celebrate together. So I say a great story. Thank you very much, Jess.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Jess.
Goodbye. Right, well, that was a lovely story. So let's now move into the main part of our board. So apologies for absence. We have an apology from Matt Powles, who I was going to introduce today as our interim executive operations director. Unfortunately, he's off sick today, so hopefully we'll meet him next month. I have an apology from Richard Oostrom in that he is on his way, but he's had some travel problems, so he's hoping to join us ASAP, but he's going to be a bit late coming. But I also wanted in this section just to recognise that today is the last meeting of our beloved Jackie Edwards in her role as interim chief nurse. She's around for another couple of months, so we're not losing her yet, but she's been outrageous enough as to book holiday for her board next time, so she won't get another opportunity. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge our massive debt to Jackie. She stepped in, she has done a phenomenal job as interim chief nurse, and we're not losing her, thankfully. We go with that we wouldn't be prepared to do, but certainly in terms of her role, absolutely phenomenal, and really want to thank you on behalf of the board for having stepped in at such short notice and having done such a fabulous job. Thank you. Okay, so items of any other business. I've not been notified of any. Does anybody want to bring anything to our attention at this point? No, I don't see any hands. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Obviously, the standard ones are on the website in the normal way. Are there any specific declarations that anyone would like to make in respect of today's agenda? No, I don't see anything, so let's move on. Minutes of the previous meeting are in the pack. Can I ask for any any comments or changes that are needed? Jo.
Thank you, Chair. Just to highlight in the apologies, my job title needs to be amended from Deputy to Director of Strategy and Planning, please. And also under the provider collaborative item, there's just a little bit of details in terms of the trust descriptions that I can manage offline, because we need to describe it's UHCW as well as UHV in the minutes. We just need to amend to correct those, please.
Yeah, thank you. I did notice a couple of other things in the minutes where people's names are not quite right, or people are being, I think Richard Doostrom is described as a voting board member, which he isn't, and there's a couple of things there. So yes, that certainly thank you for. I'm sure Rebecca and Jo are making note of that. Neil.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I wasn't at the meeting. My Deputy Jo Cohen attended, but just from a point of accuracy perspective, given this is a public document, page 10 of our pack, page 7 of the minutes, so 1223, going concern, the second sentence, this was the 10th consecutive year of not achieving break-even status. Could we change status to duty, just to be absolutely clear? We did achieve a break-even in 2021, but the important thing is the break-even duty, which is taking 5 years together. So just to be absolutely clear, it is a public document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Christine.
Yeah, just a typo really. The last paragraph on page 5, the stroke SNAP audit. SNAP is an acronym for the Stroke Services National Audit Programme. So it should be capital S, capital S, capital N, capital A, capital P.
Thank you very much, Christine. Yes, I think given there were a few, as I say, and I noticed a couple of things as well. I suggest that we if we can action those corrections this time, but I think that it does say to me that actually getting them out a little bit earlier so that we have a chance to review them in advance of board and can make those changes so that we only publish them once would be very helpful. And so if we could move to that, that would be brilliant. Okay, so subject to those changes, are we happy to accept those as a fair record of our meeting last month? Thank you very much. Let's move on then to the action log. Rebecca. Rebecca, I can't hear you. Has she dropped off?
Oh, no, sorry, my mute button decided that it didn't want to cooperate. Apologies. Right, thank you. So we've got the action log. It's the single item in relation to the culture session, and as you've been aware, and as per the update, we've been updating the board development programme. So that will be slotted in as part of the future plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Right, thank you. So if there are no questions or comments on the action log, we'll move forward then to Chair's report. I'm going to take this as read. I'd like to take this as read. As you will see, I don't have anything particularly to report apart from the fact I did have to do a Chair's action where there was time pressure that we needed to do it quickly. I think the papers are all in the reading room, and I think it's I think it has been through F&P, so it has had committee scrutiny as well. But in terms of that, we need ratification of that Chair's action. Can I have your agreement to approval of that, please? Thank you very much. Then I'll move on. Matthew, Chief Executive's report.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, everybody. Nice to see you. Again, take my report as read. Worth again noting the continuing industrial action. Whilst some of the trade unions have accepted the government's offer, we know that the Royal College of Nursing and the BMA, British Medical Association, continue to plan for further industrial action. Can't underestimate, colleagues, the disruption that this continues to cause us, our patients, our management and clinical staff. And as you can see in my report, we're also now going to be seeing a ballot by the British Medical Association of Consultant Medical Staff with a closing date of the 26th of June. So I suspect this is going to rumble on as a significant issue for us as organisation to well into this financial year. I can't underestimate the burden and the toil this is creating for particularly for our operational teams, but in reality, our patients are being delayed, are being disrupted. We're trying to minimise that as best we can, but again, I'm sure I've got the backing of the board to recognise the importance of government and the trade unions coming together to reach agreement as swiftly as possible, so that disruption for patients is minimised to the smallest possible impact as it can be, and whilst recognising that those patients that are being delayed, we're working hard with our clinical and operational teams to get them seen and treated as quickly as we can. So I think that's a significant issue that we continue to need to respond to. Despite that, we've, as board colleagues will know, that we've now submitted the annual performance and financial plan for this year. We secured agreement by the board as early as late as last week. That's been submitted, and we wait further response. The submission for us is going to be quite a stretch for the organisation, but does mean that we've been able to submit a forecast break-even position with non-recurrent support from the system. So obviously more on that as we get into the meeting. I've included our forward improvement system update, recognising that we're now entering into the second year of implementation. You can see there quite a bit of detail. At last week's Transformation Guiding Board, we agreed that we would accelerate the rollout of our flow and discharge processes under Christine Blanchard's leadership, but with the support of all executive and divisional colleagues, particularly recognising that the changes that have been piloted in certain areas have shown to significantly reduce the time for discharge summaries to be prepared, and some of the other elements, including preparation of tablets to take home, that will enable our patients to be discharged earlier in the day, which is colleagues that will have looked at detail in our performance report will see that is one of the things that does slow down flow in our hospitals, particularly on the Worcestershire Royal site. So a lot more to do there. We are planning for a visit to the Virginia Mason Institute, our partners in this endeavour, later in the year, when we hope that the disruption caused by things such as industrial action will be over. And then another point just to note, colleagues, that isn't in the report before I talk about the final element of this, is that we've had an incident we had to deal with relatively recently involving a couple of our wards at the Alex site, where we've had an infestation of very tame bugs, but they led to us needing to clean areas. That cleaning is ongoing, and again, big thanks to all the staff involved in that, which created some disruption, but the teams responded really positively in that regard. And then the final point, just to note, Christine Blanchard and Neil Cook has recently agreed by the Remuneration Committee will act as my two deputies, replacing the role that Paul Brennan fulfilled. And it gives us a nice balance, I think, of clinical and quality and safety focus and efficiency, and the delivery of the finance. And I've said all along since I've been in the organisation that quality and safety and cost improvement are two sides of the same coin, and recognising that our deputies reflect those two sides. I'm sure they won't thank me for that analogy, but I think it's important that we step forward into this year with a continuing focus on quality of care and cost improvement in the way that we have done in recent years. So I'll pause there, Chair. Happy to take any questions on any of that or anything else, actually.
Thank you, Matthew. Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the forward improvement system, Matthew, I know we're a year in and we've got some achievements under our belt, so to speak, but in your experience and that of colleagues, are we about where we should be in the context of a 2 or 3 year programme of improvement?
Yeah, it's a good question, Colin. So again, having been involved in this sort of work before and working closely with, particularly with our colleagues at University Hospitals Coventry and Warwickshire and at Leeds University Hospitals, who are 2, if you like, buddy organisations, I would say that in some elements we've made faster progress, and in others perhaps less so. I think the challenge for us has been being able to free people from the shop floor particularly over the last 6 months, Colin, to attend training. That continues to be a challenge for us. But each week we're at our weekly stand-up hearing stories of really quite good adoption of some of the principles and new learnings that people have. Only this week we heard from a ward clerk on Ward 11 at the Alex, who as part of her homework, her field work after her training on the foundation element of the programme, has essentially reorganised the way in which patient communication on key learnings and priorities for individual patient care within a 4-bedded bay is organised. That's led to fewer steps, fewer falls of patients, because staff are spending more time in the bays than they were as a consequence of some of those changes. Now, if we can roll that out across the wards at the Alex and then subsequently in Worcester Royal, that I think will have a further significant impact positively, both on patient experience, but also on patient safety as well in relation to falls. So it's that sort of work that if we can get that at the grassroots level within the organisation, that kind of improvement, that's going to build the sustainability of this. So I think the key for us now, particularly going into the sort of this year, is the importance of the board leadership of this improvement system, being visible, being focused, being challenging, and supporting teams. But the key really is getting people trained and then rolling out the improvements and celebrating them as we go along. So my last organisation, Colin, just to give you a sense, where we embarked on a similar kind of approach, I think we're further ahead because we've managed to train over 1,000, as you can see in the report, over 1,000 staff. But I still think there's quite a long way to go. And if you talk to colleagues from the Virginia Mason Institute, this is a lifelong journey, not just one that will be for 3 years.
Thank you, Matthew and Colin. Simon.
Thanks, Matthew. And it was on forward I was going to come back on. Just as some colleagues will be aware, government NHS has recently put out some guidance, 19th of April, on all trusts having an evidence-based improvement system in place. So I think we are well placed because we're down this road already. It was good that you flagged up our relationship with University Hospital Coventry and Warwickshire, because I think that's something we'll continue to develop through this. But we're ahead of the game where this is concerned, and I'm not underestimating the challenges. And having done my foundation training only last Friday, I know how useful it is, and to get that spread more widely. But we are well placed. I think the fact that that we have that evidence-based improvement system working with us now and becoming part of our culture. Just a passing remark on how much knowledge I now have of book lice. They do seem to favour clean places, bizarrely, but there you go. I'll just put that one out there. But I couldn't help but try and investigate who these little critters are, but we'll get rid of them fairly soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Simon. I don't see any other hands raised. So if I just make a couple of comments, I think, you know, on various things in Matthew's report, I think there's an overriding theme here, be it in terms of the, you know, the ongoing response to industrial action or the annual plan, the agreement of the plan, or indeed the forward improvement system. What all of these have in common is, in order for us to have made the progress we have done, it has relied incredibly on the superhuman efforts of our executive team and leadership team to keep this stuff going. Every time there is an industrial action, the risk assessments, the planning that needs to go in is you know, cannot be underestimated. For Neil and his team to agree the 23-24 planning involves some incredibly difficult negotiations, and he and the team had to work incredibly hard to get that far. And in terms of the forward improvement system, it's lovely to see this progress. Clearly there's more to do, but actually at a time of such pressure in the NHS, to have even got this far is absolute testimony to the commitment of our executive team and our senior leaders. So I just want to pay tribute to them on behalf of our non-executive colleagues, that we recognise how hard it has been and is continuing to be, and we're really grateful for the efforts you're making. So thank you. If there's no other comments on the Chief Exec's report, I'd like to move on then to the integrated performance report and hand over to Vicky, I imagine. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Anita. Good morning, everyone. This is the integrated performance report for month 12. It has an overall assurance level of 4 that has remained unchanged throughout the last financial year. It was approved through TME and also through Finance and Performance Committee. However, at Quality Governance Committee, there was an amendment made to one of the assurance levels relating to the fractured neck of femur, which dropped from a level 5 to a level 4 following an in-depth conversation at that subcommittee. And I'm sure Christine will probably touch on that as we go through. I'll just pause there. So I'm just going to run through some of the operational headlines in the absence of Matt, if I may, Chair. So you will note that the impact of the industrial action in April relating to the junior doctor strike has actually been captured in terms of number of patients impacted. However, I'm pleased to report that our longest waiters, which we've identified there across RTT and cancer pathways, they've already been booked in to receive their treatment. So just so people are aware of that piece. In terms of our cancer performance, we continue to make some really good progress, particularly around the 2-week wait standard, where we've actually achieved that for the 4th consecutive month, despite receiving the highest number of 2-week wait referrals as well, of over 3,000. Our best practice pathways continue to show improvement, and you'll see that particularly in our 28 faster diagnosis standard, where we're up at 70%. We still have challenges around urology, as we've identified throughout most of this year. We will see an improvement in our benchmark position, and that's evident in our progress against our peer group as well, and that's pleasing to see. In terms of referral to treatment pathways, we had 0 patients waiting over 104 weeks at the end of February, and that's remained into March. And we have 310 patients waiting over 78 weeks, and that's an improvement on the forecasted position that we spoke about last month as well. However, just to note, that's currently unvalidated, but we don't expect it to deteriorate in terms of a position. The elected task force, which Alex spoke to us about last month even, everyone, continues to meet weekly, and that oversight group is down at specialty level, ensuring that those delivery plans remain on track. And we're starting to see some improvements, particularly around those long waiters, as we've just indicated. In terms of diagnostics, we actually treated our patients waiting over 13 weeks has decreased below 600 for the first time since March 2020. So yet again, another testament to the amount of work that's underway and that additional capacity that's been brought online through the community diagnostic centres that we now see. In terms of patient flow, all of our urgent care performance metrics remain special cause for concern. High number of COVID patients occupied our beds during March, and that impacted on our ability to create flow throughout our clinical sites. Bed occupancy remains high, actually, and does not include our boarding figures. So as we know that we do have patients that board across all of our wards, and those aren't captured in the occupancy rate. So potentially our occupancy rate is in excess of 100%. And I'll pause there if I may, Chair.
Thank you, Vicky. Any questions or comments for Vicky so far? No? Okay. So who are we moving to next? Is it Jackie?
Should we move to Jackie and Christine for quality?
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So if I can just draw the board's attention to 3 very important quality measures, and then I'll hand over to Christine. The first, as Matthew mentioned earlier, that remains one of our major quality measures that is a real focus for us, and priority is our infection prevention and control. To draw the board's attention really with regards to C. difficile, the last few months, as I reported last month, have been a real challenge, particularly with regards to some of the outbreaks. Now, this isn't related necessarily to C. diff, even though we have exceeded our target there, and that is a big piece of work we're working with the ICB system-wide with regards to C. diff management, but the other areas is really our COVID outbreaks, and we have seen a sustained number of patients who are in our hospital of around 80 to 90 consistently, and this is posing a challenge with regards to sort of outbreaks. That we have seen a new IPC guidelines come in on the 1st of April, and we are looking to implement those. And if anything, you know, this is opening up more. This is becoming more business as usual, very similar to how we've managed flu in the past. So we are seeing that sort of increase in outbreaks across the wards. And the other area that we have been really quite challenged with is norovirus. And obviously they do impact on our ability of sort of flow through the hospital, because it's very important that we do maintain those very important IPC management for those areas. Lots of actions that are in place with regards to sort of back to basic elements for staff, and bringing an awareness through for staff who are extremely busy on the day-to-day of making sure we've got hand hygiene in place. And you can see that that is actually we are in a positive place with regards to how that is being maintained. But we have got some environmental challenges as well in some of the areas, and as Matthew said, we have been offered an opportunity through obviously having the Buckeye situation, to offer a rolling programme of deep clean at the Alex, which is underway, and but that's actually a very positive position for us to be in, and there is real evidence of how that is going to make a difference. We have also carried out tabletop reviews and deep dives into both those areas of COVID and norovirus, where we can learn and where we can support wards that have been particularly challenged in those areas. The other metric I'd like to just draw your attention to is the falls. Matthew alluded to the forward improvement methodology of how that in one area has really helped support make a difference. But we are seeing, as the metrics has told us, an increase in falls. Now, thankfully, these are not falls with harm, but an increase for patients who on our wards. Now, this is respective of the number of 1,000 bed days that we're seeing. So as we're seeing more people through our beds, which we have done in the last few months, we're also seeing an increase in those falls. But notwithstanding that as a reason, actually real increased focus with regards to training of staff, making sure we've got a real awareness of the Stay in the Bay and those campaigns with regards to that, but also again working with our ICB colleagues, thinking about the pre-hospital element of people. So when they are in hospital, you know, are there other areas that we can think about with regards to their mobility outside of the hospital? That means when they do come to us, actually that's preventative. And the last area I'd like to just draw your attention to is our complaints. And we have seen a real rise, 25% rise in complaints, particularly in surgery, which is very much linked to people's frustrations at the waits that they are experiencing. But that is putting a real pressure on our staff, particularly our surgical teams. We are meeting weekly with them to see about how we can support them with it. But it is an area that I would like to just draw your attention to. That said, and to finish with a positive, actually, as you will see from our friends and family, we have maintained through this quite difficult few months a positive patient experience, and that's been consistent throughout. And I think, again, that's testament to the work that the staff are putting in with regards to thinking about compassionate care, thinking about their approaches to in their provision of sort of quality improvement for patients. I'll hand over to Christine.
Thank you, Jackie. Christine.
Yeah, there's only a couple of things I'd really like to draw out of my section of the IPR. Really, the first thing is that I still think that the balance between the performance and finance and quality measures that are reported in the IPR is not quite right. And we have been doing some work on that to improve the depth and breadth of the quality reporting that is in the IPR. That will be for the coming financial year. In terms of the metrics that are reported, I'll focus on the fractured neck of femur, where we have downgraded the assurance level to a 4. That was on the basis, really, of compliance dropping to 62%, and the fact that we haven't achieved the target for time to theatre, for the proportion of patients getting to theatre within 36 hours. For a year, or really since the outbreak of COVID. The slight fall in the last month was related to industrial action. We had to cancel some of our trauma lists in relation to industrial action. Normally we run 2 trauma lists per day at the Alex, and we were only at Worcester, and we were only able to run 1. That said, the average time to theatres for the patients is 39.7 hours. So it should take a relatively small shift to be able to get more patients to theatre within the 36-hour target. And our length of stay remains the lowest within the Midlands. So the reason why the target is 36 hours for getting patients to theatre with fractured neck of femur is more because of the impact on length of stay than the impact on mortality or return to mobility or other outcomes. So the fact that we're not meeting the target is not yet impacting on our length of stay. There is ongoing work on that, and we will. And I'm meeting with the team later on this week to find out what the next steps are in making improvements in that metric. I think that's all I really wanted to talk about in my section, but happy to take questions.
Thank you, Christine. Tony.
Thanks, Chair. It's not on that point, Christine. I wanted to pick up on stroke again. I'm looking at pages 64 and 65 in the pack, and it seems to me the challenge hasn't gone away. The situation doesn't appear to be improving. And reading the commentary in page 64, I'm just finding it difficult to see our level of confidence in terms of being able to shift it, because certainly direct admission to straight ward has been declining for 3 years now. I'm just trying to get some sort of sense about whether this is an insurmountable problem or something that we think we can make some progress with, because otherwise it just seems to me that we're just heading in one direction, and you know, clearly it would be a cause for concern for everybody. So I'm just trying to get some assurance about whether all the things we're talking about doing are actually going to start to see some benefits in this next sort of reporting period or this current year. Thank you.
Yeah, so that metric refers to patients getting from arrival at the trust into the acute stroke unit within 4 hours. So it's not the proportion of patients that go directly to the stroke unit, it's the proportion that go within 4 hours. And that is related to our overall problems with patient flow from the front door, because the clock starts ticking when the ambulance arrives, not when the patient gets into the emergency department. So we do have a ring-fenced hyperacute stroke bed, which is reserved for patients who require thrombolysis. That said, that bed quite often gets filled, and in order to vacate it, there's some bed moves and there's some shuffling that needs to go on in order to do it. Despite that, looking at the proportion of patients who require thrombolysis that get it in a timely manner and our door-to-needle times for thrombolysis, they're all satisfactory. And that is because our stroke team goes to the emergency department. So because we can't move the patient to the stroke unit, we move the stroke unit to the patient, and they get their full assessment and their thrombolysis in the emergency department. But it's not ideal. I think that until we can resolve our overall problems with patient flow, then I think that metric is unlikely to move a great deal.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Christine. Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. My question is the risk on page 26. I just want to know if they have any update from the VAT advisor in terms of the UEC VAT reclaim.
Can't find the page at the moment. Who's best placed to respond to that?
Should I pick that up under the finance? Would you mind, Michelle, if I pick that up as part of the
sure
presentation?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah,
that's fine. Thank you, Neil.
Brilliant. Thank you, Neil. Right. Are there any other? Oh, Simon on this page.
Thanks, Anita. And I'm sort of conscious that we haven't got Matt here with us today, but I did want to just look at one of the slides on patient flow before we move on to the numbers. In there, we've got a section on what we're going to do next. And I'm just wondering if there's anybody can give us an update on how, if basically we're getting on with system partners about some of the things we can improve on patient flow. And I know there's a reference there to next year's winter pressures. So it'd be helpful just to be cited now on some of the things we're trying to do, maybe some of the blockages we're experiencing, so that we're clear where we are on that. As I say, I'm sure it'd be Matt's baby to respond to, but if anybody can give us an idea on where we are on those, that would be appreciated.
I'm wondering whether Christine, given your role, thanks.
Yeah, I'm now calling myself the patient flow czar, Simon. So I think there are two aspects really. I think there are some of our issues with patient flow that are absolutely both within our gift and our responsibility to resolve ourselves. And whilst there is work that we need to do with our system partners, I certainly do think we need to get our own house in order as well. And part of the issue that we've got is that we've got different areas of work that are happening under different umbrellas with different groups using different methodologies, which need to be all brought together. And what we've got to do within our own organisation, we've got to have a clearly articulated vision of what good patient flow from the front door to the back door of the hospital looks like. And using our forward improvement principles, we've got to eliminate waste and streamline the processes for patients throughout the system. I've now put together a team. We're trying to draw together different strands of work that are happening in different places and bring that under a single overall patient flow umbrella. So that is our own work, and we absolutely have to take responsibility and accountability for that. There is also the work that we're doing with system partners, which falls under the Home First umbrella. We've just looked at the governance of that programme and who is responsible for what areas of the programme, divided into pre-hospital and out-of-hospital care, through to the piece that we're responsible for within our own hospital, and then discharge to other providers and out-of-hospital care at the other end of the pathway. And that is really being led and driven by the ICB, and we're working very closely with them on initiatives to look at out of hospital care. The ICB are very clear that it's their responsibility to look to manage winter initiatives. So I think in our system, our winter planning has not been as perhaps comprehensive and varied as I've come across in other systems, and the ICB are definitely taking responsibility for that. There's a system-wide review of bed capacity across the whole system, looking at the process of left shift, so moving the focus of care from within the hospital to out of hospital care, more towards care closer to home, and that again is a system responsibility that they're taking full responsibility for delivering.
Thanks for that. I think for all of us who engage with the ICB, there's a challenge here for us to make sure that they don't forget that this is very important work, and I know they will see that as very important work. But if we're not as far down the road as we should be preparing for winter pressures, for example, everything we can do to speed that up, I think, is going to be vital to make sure that we don't have, or that we avoid any blockages that can be avoided. Obviously ourselves, as you were saying, but obviously those that reliant upon system partners as well. And while I'm on, can I just take the opportunity to thank you and colleagues for us moving to the first place out of the West Midlands Trusts for 2-week waiters for breast symptomatic. I know we were 4th last month. It's always nice to be top of the pile, so congratulations to everybody involved in that.
Thank you, Simon, and that is really building on a very positive peer review of our breast service as well. So yeah, we're really proud of the breast service. It's excellent.
Brilliant, thank you, and well said, Simon. I was going to mention it too, but you've done it for me, so thank you. Jo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Christine's articulated really clearly and outlined, you know, the key areas of work that are being undertaken, and there are a lot of different strands within the system, Simon. But just as means of assurance, one of the discussions we've asked to take to place next month is really to try and land that clear sight in terms of the initiatives that are happening around flow, because we know from the primary care perspective as well, with the fuller report, they've got an interest in the urgent care work stream. So that work is underway. And just to add that I'm aware that there is a workshop planned for winter planning that the ICB are leading on. I think it's scheduled for June, and they have made contact with the trust in terms of making sure we've got the appropriate people involved. And we've talked a little bit about an approach that we would be supportive of in terms of flow from a pathway perspective, not just limited to winter planning.
Thanks, Jo. And can I say, I just think the fact that we are actually starting to talk about these things in May is excellent. And I know there were comments in some of the later papers about starting to look at our 24-25 PEPs early. And I think that it's exactly about us not leaving to the last minute and doing these things with a big ramp that I think is absolutely the key to success. So really like seeing that sort of shift in focus across numerous areas. Thank you. Jackie.
Yeah, thank you. And Simon, thank you. But and in your question, but I don't think it necessarily comes through our papers, and Christine and I have spoken about this with regards to quality and safety, is the impact that it's having, particularly from our surge areas and boarding. And you know, whilst patient experience, and we've really heightened our quality surveillance into these areas to ensure that every patient is getting, you know, what we need, we know it's extremely difficult for the staff. And I just want to draw the board's attention to those 2 key areas. Now, we are having lots of discussions with our system partners, because unless you see it and feel it and can experience it, it's quite difficult, isn't it, sometimes to explain what that really is when you've got an extra patient or 2 patients on a ward, or you've got a corridor that, you know, in ED that it, you know, it has got patients within it. That experience from the patients and the impact it has, particularly, you know, areas such as I referred to earlier, IPC. You've got a very busy environment. It is having an impact. And so the patient flow element is absolutely pivotal for us with regards to getting back and really seeing if we can make a difference back into those 2 key areas.
Thanks, Jackie. I'll let Matthew wrap up on this section. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I just a couple of points just to note. The ICB colleagues had commissioned a review for the system in relation to length of stay having gone up both in acute beds but also in community beds. It was led by Dr. Ian Sturgis, who's done some work in the system before. We've now received the final report, now come through the governance processes through trust management executive and through finance performance meeting with the response that's required. And obviously Christine's alluded to some of that already in relation to how we address the internal flow elements for our organisation. I think it's also worth reflecting that the likelihood of our organisation will be positioned in tier 2 in relation to oversight of urgent emergency care provision. So we want to just make sure that we've got clear reporting in through the board, but also through the integrated care board, given that urgent emergency care is a system-wide response, not purely what happens within an acute trust. And just to refer back to the forward improvement system, we've had a discussion at the Transformation Guiding Board last week and agreed that we will accelerate the rollout of some of the pilot work that's gone on in relation to internal flow. And Christine and the urgent care team and the specialty medicine team particularly are working on a plan to accelerate rollout of some of the evident improvements that we've seen in reducing the time to identify and expedite discharges particularly. So I don't suspect that urgent emergency care will go away. I think the other element, of course, is that we're now on that glide path to the opening of the new emergency department at the Worcestershire Royal Hospital. And clearly we want to make sure that the planning and execution of that is well organised, and we'll be overseeing that through our strategic programme board, which meets monthly, and next meeting being this Friday. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. I think that moves us on to people and culture. Tina, did you want to draw anything to our attention, please?
Yes, please. First of all, if I can respond to a point that was raised, I think by Simon at the last board meeting on page 104 around how we present our workforce, male and female, which doesn't actually represent our workforce accurately. Sadly, it's not been as straightforward for us to add different categories in because of some of the data quality issues and some of the reluctance for colleagues to fill in their status. So we're having to do some more work around this, Simon, so it's not going to be something that we can do quickly. So my proposal would be to remove that from our reporting at this stage until we work that through the LGBTQ plus staff network, please. That's the first point I wanted to raise. Just 3 things for focus around workforce that we are concentrating on for the first quarter of the year. First is around job planning. You can see a further deterioration in that, and job plans are really important to us to link to activity. We have seen completion rates improve with women's and children's division, but we are working with the other divisions to make sure we've got a corrective action plan in place, because it's really important we have those up-to-date job plans to make sure we've got the associated activity in place. The other 2 aspects are to making sure we've got a cost-effective workforce. So that's around our banking agency premium staffing costs. and that links to Neil's presentation or our presentation later around the PEPs. We've got a high number of saving schemes around plans around a banking agency, and we've got quite a challenging target to reduce that down at system level to a 6% of agency spend compared to the overall wage pay spend. And so that is reliant on us having quite robust plans to achieve that this year. And that will be driven through the Transforming Delivery Board and Delivery Group that's been taken forward in the Trust. And the last thing to say is around the workforce growth that we've seen in the last 3 years and the need for us to make sure that that's added value either from an activity or quality perspective. We have completed the workforce bridge around that now, so we do understand where the workforce growth has been, and we'll then now working with the clinical divisions and corporate areas to get underneath that and to look at whether there has been added value or not, and what the actions need to be according to what we find from those conversations. And we'll report the outcomes of that through to F&P and People and Culture Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Karen.
Thank you. Thanks, Tina. You raised one of the points that I was going to flag, actually. I just wanted to explore it a little bit more, and that was about the job planning. So really pleased to hear, you know, it's on the radar in terms of that impact and the link to activity. And I guess my question is, do you have any sense of whether we are missing opportunities as a result of the low level of compliance with job planning, particularly in relation to the, you know, heightened level of activity that we need to do that we've all rehearsed and discussed in terms of the annual plan?
I do feel we're still on an improvement journey, Karen, regards to our job planning, and I don't think we've quite nailed some of the specialty level job planning and team job planning. And if I can bring Christine in, because I know you've been having some more conversations with colleagues around that.
Yeah, so this is something that we discuss regularly when I meet weekly with the divisional directors. I think job planning doesn't happen homogeneously throughout the year, so there tends to be a cycle of job planning at the beginning of the financial year, which means that our compliance figures can vary quite radically throughout the year. I think one of the things that we have been debating is, as we are increasingly reliant on our existing staff doing extra contractual activities in order to meet our activity targets and working more flexibly, we probably should be moving more towards e-rostering as opposed to e-job planning, so that our staff in some specialties can have an annualised job plan where they need to deliver a required number of programmed activities throughout the year. Because whilst we're very good at picking up when they've done an extra clinic or an extra theatre list, we're not necessarily very good at picking up when they've dropped a clinic or a theatre list due to other commitments, for example, having to cover for absent colleagues. For some of our specialties, they already do e-rostering, so anaesthetics and the emergency department do. But actually, I think it would be quite beneficial for our surgical colleagues, for example, to do that. And I think that work would then support our theatre productivity and theatre utilisation programmes. So the difficulty we have is that our clinical managers are not well trained in either doing annualised job plans or electronic rostering. And so we need to do a big piece of work to embed those skills in our clinical managers.
Thanks, Christine. Colin.
Thanks, Chair. I took part in a appointment panel for a consultant recently, which unfortunately was unsuccessful, and I thought that must be incredibly frustrating to those who took part. And it left me with the thought that, is there more we can be doing to support those who are trying to get consultants in post? And I saw in the papers that there's been a business case for increasing resource capacity in medical resourcing and recruitment. So I wondered, by conflating the two, are there some issues that we need to be aware of, and what will the business plan do to remedy those?
There's two aspects to this work. So one is increasing the resources in medical resourcing in relation to, if you like, our more normal recruitment processes, because there are definitely hold-ups and delays in getting some of the work done. There is also going to be an RPIW in June looking at medical recruitment to try and take out some of the waste in that process. So, but that is about essentially using our standard processes, but more efficiently to recruit new staff. There's another piece of work. So the CSU, when they looked at our PEP plans for the year, identified that we had opportunities to switch some of our high cost agency doctors into substantive appointments, or substitute them for substantive appointments, and that is included within the PEP plan. That involves recruiting a specialised recruitment specialist, a headhunter type, who will target particular posts and particular individuals to fill those posts substantively. So that that post is currently going through our internal recruitment processes to recruit to that post, and we hope to have someone in place to do that work fairly soon.
Thanks, Christine. Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just coming back on Colin's point, and in the absence of Richard Oostrom, I'd just say that we had a good dig at the medical resourcing proposal at the last F&P, because it's quite an expensive proposal, and we were particularly interested to see the level of confidence and the benefits that it would deliver in terms of speeding up recruitment, securing recruitment, etc., etc. It's a pretty convincing case, and the committee backed it, as referred to later on. But just to say, Colin, I think it's one of those things where it's a matter of judgment and a matter of faith, but there's a lot of common sense behind it, and so the non-execs at F&P felt pretty confident that it was the right thing to be doing. We're happy to back the executive view on it, but it's an expensive proposition, but if it works out, it would have massive benefits. I think that was our view of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. And indeed, Richard has joined us during this conversation. Just before I move on to finances, I know Sue's hand briefly flickered up. Did you want to come in, Sue, or is your query been answered?
Christine's telepathic.
Perfect. Well, that's how, that's what we want, telepathy between our execs and non-execs. So that's wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you. Then let's move to the final section of the IPR, the financial position. Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So this is the end of the year financial report. Subject to audit, we've prepared the accounts. They've been sent off on time. They've been shared with the audit committee, and we're currently in the middle of the audit. So this is all subject to audit, of course. But we have, or we are reporting that we've achieved our financial plan for the year. We set the plan of 19.9 million deficit, and we've overachieved that by 0.1 million. So just straight beneath the bar in terms of achieving it, which is fantastic news. You'll see on the face of the statement there, the INE statement, there's some significant swings in the month. These aren't unusual at the end of the year. Therefore, the notional pension contribution, which is a pass-through, so the pay award accrual that's outstanding, again, we're funded for those, and donated PPE, again, we're funded for those. So some significant swings in the month, none of which impact on our financial performance. Productivity and efficiency, we ended the year with just over £10 million of PEP. So we'd set ourselves 15.7 million as a target. Clearly, we've not achieved that. We have been somewhat fortuitous in year. So the elective recovery fund that we initially at the start of the year, the 15.7 million was there to earn. It actually came through that we would get that as a pass-through, which has been of benefit to us. In addition, we've had some slippage on business cases that have contributed, and we've used some release from the balance sheet that was no longer required in order to help us get us to that end of year position. So there's some significant improvements that are required in next year, and clearly we'll come on to talk about those later in the day in terms of our approach to PEP and ERF. Just moving on to capital, significant capital programme that we set at the start of the year, £62 million. We've delivered just over 50 million of that. Again, we planned that alongside NHS England Regional Office, and therefore we've brokered the remaining funds into next year. So we've delivered some significant schemes during the year, and no mean feat to spend that amount of money in the last quarter, which I think we were all concerned about, but we managed to achieve the bulk of that and protect the funds into next year, which again is great. Coming on to the specific point Michelle raised earlier in respect of the VAT. So this is the retrospective VAT reclaim. So we've not included it in our plan for next year. But this was a reclaim for VAT because, of course, we started with a letter of intent on the UEC programme in order to get the pace. But, of course, we wanted to push this through PropCo for the VAT benefits. And therefore, we put in place a retrospective VAT claim. HMRC have actually come back initially stating that, no, the original intent or the intent that you should have had in place at the time wouldn't necessarily override. What actually happened is their initial view. They've given us a right to reply within 30 days. So we've got until the 26th of May. Our VAT advisors are currently working on that for us. And I'll bring that back through governance in due course and update you on where we are at with it. As I say, I think it's worth around £3.5 million, and certainly would improve our capital position next year, given that we've exhausted some of the internally generated funds already on the overspend on the UEC. But it wouldn't hinder our current plan, as in we're not planning that we would get it. This would be a benefit to us. But it is disappointing. But as I say, we've got our VAT advisors onto it, and they're writing back to HMRC. And they'll inform us and include us in that. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Oh, there you go, Richard.
Thanks, Anita, and sorry I was late. So first of all, I think a remark, and Neil mentioned this, but I think it's a great achievement that we actually achieved our financial targets. So it's a good sign of our financial management capability, which really improved over the last year, despite the fact, that we've got the strikes, we've got COVID outbreaks, we've got other outbreaks. So that's a really, really good job. On the critical side, and I know we're going to discuss this more in the afternoon, but I think it's important for me to make some comments about this. We haven't achieved our PEP. In the PEP, we've achieved some benefits, but most of it is non-recurring. So our run rate hasn't fundamentally improved. And when you look at the productivity, it hasn't improved either. So those are the really concerns. And with the challenging plan for next year, it's going to be even more important that we really see those dials move. And I wanted to understand from Neil, how are we going to be assured of that, Neil?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Board will be aware through previous discussions, and indeed Tina mentioned it there earlier. We do need to step up some additional capacity in order to get some assurance early in the year in respect of our PEP delivery, but also in terms of our activity and our productivity improvement. So we've got some key focus areas, and we're putting some of our capacity from the senior team into this to get those PEPs up and running, started as soon as possible, but also get some assurance, some security over our activity and our income streams for the year. So those are the two critical areas, as I say, that I've mentioned that have been weaknesses this year, and they're the key areas of focus for us in the early part of next year. So we've got a weekly oversight board an executive committee meeting that'll work with that team that's stepping out for a 4 to 6 week period, just to ensure that we've got visibility and oversight and some security on these are delivering, as opposed to deliverable, which is where they currently are as programs of work.
Thank you, Neil. Simon.
Just to add to Richard's congratulations, I think it's no mean achievement to have come in on budget. There are plenty of trusts that make promises, but unfortunately they're able to keep them. We set a target, we've stuck to it, and I know that's credit to the finance team, but also credit to the whole trust. A lot of people worked hard on to deliver this, so well done, and a huge capital spend as well. And we'll come on to the tricky stuff at another time.
Yeah, completely agree with both Richard's and Simon's comments there. I'll leave it to Matthew, if I don't see any other hands, to wrap up this section. Matthew.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. And yeah, I mean, I think recognition to all board members for the progress on the financial improvement. Again, doing what we say we'll do as an organisation is what we set out to do. And I think the landing the jumbo jet on the postage stamp has been no mean feat, whilst recognising that there's been some wins and losses. And there's no doubt further opportunities, as Richard's pointed out. I think it's also, though, important to note that there are some benchmarks that show that we are significantly better than others from a productivity perspective. Last month's IPR, in fact, this month's IPR, I think, shows us on one of the theatre utilisation percentages in the upper quartile. But actually best of peer. So I think it's important to, whilst recognise that some of the indicators, what we need to be striving for is that continuing focus on improving productivity and efficiency across the organisation where it makes sense. I think credit to the finance team under Neil's leadership, but also importantly other teams across the organisation who have taken on the mantle of really looking to see ways in which improvements can be made from a cost improvement perspective. I think Neil's touched on this important point about how we're going to shift the approach to oversight of some of the big schemes this year. We've agreed the commencement of Transformation Delivery Board, which will use some of the forward improvement system methodology, but really hold corporate and clinical divisions to account for delivery of some of their big ticket items in the cost improvement area. We had some good progress last year in delivering a reduction in our agency spend. We want to build on that and make sure we've got rigor right across the board in terms of the way in which we approach efficiency, productivity, and the way we spend money. So I think, if we look back 4 years, we were dealing with a underlying deficit of around 80 million. Going into this year, that's significantly less, but we know there's more opportunities, as Richard's rightly pointed out, and I think the team I know are fully behind putting their shoulder to the wheel to improve that position further this year. So thanks to the whole team and to the whole board for the focus on this. Doing what we say we do is important, valued within the organisation, and we need to equip ourselves now well to progress that this year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. And again, completely echo all your comments. A really fantastic effort. So, but more to do. But let's take a moment to acknowledge the progress that's being made here. Right. Before that comes to the end of the IPR. We're asked for an assurance to agree assurance level of 4. Can I have the board's agreement to that, or any comments? I see a few nods. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on then to the committee reports, which I suspect will be fairly brief, given we talked at some length at various bits. But F&P, Richard, was there anything you wanted to draw to our attention?
Well, I think we've discussed it to some extent. Matthew mentioned theatre productivity. I was going to mention that as a highlight as well, which is, I think, on the positive side. We spent time on forward improvement as well and where we are, and we saw that we've made some good progress and some good green shoots, but at the same time, there's more to do. And we extensively discussed the recruitment business case, as was highlighted earlier, which is one of our key vehicles to further reduce the bank and agency. I think we had very good conversation around the level of assurance we need to put in place to be successful on these things, and we'll discuss that further.
Thank you, Richard. I don't see any hands. So moving on to Julie, quality governance.
Other than the fact that we spent a lot of time on the industrial action risk plan, we've covered it in infection control, in stroke, and they were the major items, and the rest of the report, I think, is as read.
Thank you, Julie. Again, I don't see any hands. So thank you, colleagues, for that. That was a helpful update. Then let's move on to Freedom to Speak Up report. Mel, I think you're with us. Welcome to board today.
Thank you.
Yes, give us what are the highlights you need to share with us?
Okay, so I'll take it as read. The highlights are, obviously, we've completed our self-assessment, and the gaps from the self-assessment, the biggest one being the mandatory training to mandate it for all staff, which I'm in the process of writing a paper to bring to TME so that we can discuss that. Really we finished the end of the year with quite a high percentage of anonymous concerns. Obviously this paper's a little bit out of date now, I need to add in, but we've finished with 46% anonymous concerns, which I've discussed at region, and we're kind of like a little bit baffled as to why that is. So we know that people are confident to raise concerns because the increase in concerns has occurred, but that we've got more people raising them anonymously. So there's a little bit of work to be done around that, which I think with the mandate of the training will help with that, because it will make people understand the process, and also leaders what is recognised they need to do with that. We've got some good wins out of some of the concerns. I'm working with a couple of departments with HR as well as to how, since concerns have been raised, we can put support packages in and help with these concerns where there's been multiple ones. Another easy win that we had was there was a concern raised about the trust hand lotion. There was no hand lotion in departments, and it appeared that nobody actually knew that the dispenser had been changed. So we easily recognise that with estates and with procurement, and now every department has got new dispensers, I believe, starting with NICU, which was the area that raised concerns. They were very happy. I think that's it really at the moment. And protected characteristics, as you can see now, Anita is now on there, and we are ahead of the curve nationally with that, because I know the National Guardian's Office can start collecting that data. And we've now got feedback on the portal as well, so every concern that's now closed is gets sent a feedback survey for people to fill out and send back to me, so we have live feedback. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mel. Just one thing I noticed, I'm still listed as your contact. It should be Karen now, of course, but it was something in the body that I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw my name in there, and I thought, no,
okay, what's where that
118, page 118 of the pack.
Oh.
But anyway, that was just a minor point. Richard.
Thanks, Anita, and thanks, Melanie, as well. So you mentioned the amount of anonymous, let's say, responses, and I also note still that bullying and harassment cases are on top of the list as well. Do you think there's any relationship between the two? That's one of my questions.
I think attitudes and behaviours the highest, and I think that there is still that fear of detriment, that people fear that if they raise the concern that they will suffer detriment from it. I think there is still that fear, which again is echoed nationally. And I was on the regional network meeting last week, and again, many guardians in the region have exactly the same going on, in that they feel it's detriment. So it's a big thing that I know the National Guardian's Office are working on. So I know I'm going on a walkabout with Matthew to try and allay people's fear, actually, that we support speaking up and that you won't suffer detriment from it. So I think that's one of the biggest things that stops people.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. That was my assumption too. The second question is, so the 42 champions, are they a good representation of the staff in terms of the protected characteristics?
So I'm just about to do a scope on the champions and the forward advocates to get, because obviously I took the forward advocates over as well, and all the forward advocates now are doing some element of freedom to speak up within their training as well, so that it kind of, while we've got the freedom to speak up champions, all forward advocates will have that knowledge as well. So I'm just about to scope all the forward advocates and all of the freedom to speak up champions to find out their exact departments, if they're still active, and any of those kind of things, so that we've got representatives from all walks of life. I know in the forward advocate training I do the networks with them as well, so they're all got an awareness of the networks to capture that, so that we've got good representation.
Thank you, Mel and Richard. Christine.
Yeah, I've got a question about the numbers, Mel, and I don't know whether to interpret it as a good news story or a bad news story, because from the kind of peak of cases raised last summer and autumn through to this year, there's been a definite decline in the number of cases raised. Now, and that could either be because people are more confident about raising concerns up through the normal management route, because I often feel that the freedom to speak up route, it's a kind of safety net, isn't it? It's when people when people have not felt confident about raising concerns, or not felt confident that their concerns will be addressed through their management route. So is it good news or bad news that the number are declining?
Well, on year end, we ended actually on 146. So April 22 to April 23, it was 146. We actually had a steep increase again in March. So actually, year on year, if you can see from the table, from April 18 year on year, we have actually gone up. So the increase in concerns being raised is increasing. It just dips and, you know, peaks throughout the year.
Thank you. Simon.
Thanks, Mel. Could you give us a bit more information about the active bystander training and how far that will go across the trust? Because it strikes me that this might be something that would be helpful in terms of giving real life to the behavioural charter, that colleagues know what to do. So I was just interested to know its extent, what it's going to be like, and what you think the impact will or should be.
So I did the active bystander training in Leicester a couple of days earlier on in March, February. I think it's going to be hard work rolling it out, and I've been in touch with the ICB as well, because you need train the trainers, and they've only just implemented the train the trainer days. From what I learned from it, it's about empowering gas staff actually when they see something to do something proactive. But I found it very much about external, the people that were on there weren't just from NHS. There was people from charities, there was people from social services, and a lot of it felt very much about dealing with it externally. So if you're on a train or something, so I have to say I was a little bit disappointed with the training, if in all honesty. However, there's not to say that there's some elements of it that we can't bring back to the trust and equip the staff with. So I think there's almost a case for a bit of piecemeal in it, and taking a bit of what we've already got and actually taking some of the active bystander training as well, to equip our staff. Part of the freedom to speak up mandate in the training will hopefully allow our staff to know how to raise concerns. And I think that we are, when I'm mapping it with the behavioural charter as well, and I know Rich Luckman's spoken to me about this, in actually by having that mandated, all staff will know what to do and how to raise concerns, because there's still an element of people don't even know what freedom to speak up is, unbelievably. And just from being a patient within the trust, people still questioned, well, what is freedom to speak up? When they said, what did you do? What is freedom to speak up? So I know there's still a proportion of staff that haven't reached that. So that's where, again, the forward advocates are absolutely pivotal in rolling this out and selling it to people.
Yeah, and I think if we can do something at system level on tweaking that active bystander training so that it is relevant to the situations we experience, then it could be a very useful tool. It will take some time, as you say, train the trainers, but in terms of people knowing what to do when something happens to them or they see something happening, this potentially is what we've been looking for, I think, to give people the confidence to report stuff when they see it and to sort it.
I think there's room for a hybrid model, and I've already been in talks with Dave Morgan and Kim at the ICB about this, because what we do want to do is roll it out across the ICB so that actually it equips all staff that come into contact and are active bystanders. So, but I think there is room for a hybrid model.
Thanks. Thank you. Richard.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I suppose my concern in all of this is keeping a simple message around organisational culture. What kind of place do we want our hospitals to be to work, and what do we want them to be like as places in which to be cared for? And we've got a strong foundation to build on through the forward behaviours. You know, I don't know very much about the bystander training, but certainly having done my rainbow badge training, a significant part of that is having the confidence to speak up when you observe behaviour that is either unacceptable or displays some kind of inappropriate element. And I think with all of these things, there are a number of very well-intentioned initiatives, but having too many initiatives can distract people from the core thing that we're trying to achieve, which is to build in that compassion, courtesy, civility, respect for people, and enable all of us to actively promote that and call it out when we see it not happening, whether that's in our own teams, across the wider organisation, or across society. And again, it was something that came out for me as part of my BAME mentoring. So I think sometimes giving something a particular badge is less helpful than trying to embrace the principles. So as Mel said, that hybrid approach is just giving all of us the confidence to speak up when we see something that we wish that we don't think is appropriate.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I saw Tina's hand flicker, and I wonder if you wanted to come in on this point, because I think it is an important one about wanting us to be clear and consistent about our approach to this stuff.
Yeah,
Tina, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Anita. It was that we've set up a forward steering group, which brings the forward behaviours, the forward improvement system and behaviour charter all together, and we've got the membership of that. You know, it's intentional to make sure it's all joined up and we're maximising opportunities, but making it simple for colleagues as possible, to Richard's point. So that's how we'll take it forward. And I'm happy to bring an update for the next meeting on the priorities that were taken forward into that group.
Thanks, Tina. So thank you, Mel, for that report. I mean, clearly, and you did flag to us, you know, that concern about the number of anonymous, the increase in the anonymous concerns. It sounds like you've got a plan to try and reassure people and actually get them to understand that actually the amount of feedback you can give them about what's happened about that concern is just significantly different if we know who they are, as opposed to it being anonymous. So you know, we wish you luck with that, and I'm sure the board will be tracking this in the months to come. So thank you. Right. Oh, Matthew.
Sorry, it was a mistake. So I was reaching for the react button to thumb up. So thumb up, Mel, from me.
Yeah, well done, and thank you for all the work you're doing, both with the Forward Advocates and with Freedom to Speak Up. Thank you. Right, so moving on, we are slightly behind, but it's not undoable. Safe staffing. So we have nursing followed by midwifery. So nursing, Jackie.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'll take the paper as read, but for the Trust Board, this paper is for assurance, and we're offering up a level of assurance of 6 for this paper. So key areas to cover is the assurance that actually our staffing levels were safe for the month of March, which is where this paper timeline sits. Particularly, I'd like to draw your attention to neonatal unit. As you know, we staff the neonatal unit specifically to BAPM standards. We have had support over the last few months with regards to finances to get those levels up to BAPM level, and I'm pleased to report that those levels were maintained. Paediatrics, however, did not meet the RCN safe standards, but we have, through professional judgment, which is applied here, related to patient acuity, we're able to maintain safety in these areas. The key work streams, because this is a challenged area, I think particularly in the current climate, that we are working on is obviously with regards to the mitigation we put in place to make sure those levels are safe. That does mean we use bank and agency, and it's a key priority for us with regards to looking at reducing the high cost spend of bank and agency here. And I'm pleased to report that whilst we saw an increase in demand in February, we did see this demand in March fall slightly, and actually some progress through the robust measures we've got in place at managing that bank and agency spend. Some of that bank and agency spend obviously is related to sickness, and we've seen at certainly ward and clinical level robust processes applied with management of sickness in those areas in supporting staff, as well as filling the gaps that has arisen. The other key areas that I'd just like to draw attention to is our pipelines with regards to recruitment and retention, particularly recruitment. Our healthcare support worker programme has been a challenge in recruitment. We've made significant progress with regards to obtaining, and you can see 58 job offers have been made from the beginning of January, and those staff members are coming in place. We're working with the teams with regards to making sure we can retain that staff group, because that is a key challenge for us. We have also seen a slightly improved vacancy factor to do with our registered nurse programme, thanks to the International Nurse programme. You will see we've now got an end of year with regards to that, and I'm pleased to say that of last year we brought in 135 nurses through the support with the NHSE bid. Going forward for this year, the focus is going to be looking at seeing if we can bring in up to 150, depending upon need, as we go through the financial year. And our recruitment campaign that was partially successful when we went to the Philippines with regards to a sort of one-stop shop of getting the recruitment in place is now in progress. Also, our domestic pipeline, our sort of grow your own campaign through our Best People programme is gaining good momentum. It is a challenged area, and we're finding that some of our recruitment programmes, particularly that we're running through the ICB, is not bringing in the numbers that we had hoped that it would be. So we are really looking at readdressing a different approach to that going forward. I am happy to take questions, but those are the key headlines from me.
Thank you, Jackie. And whilst we mention international nurses, I believe tomorrow is International Nurses Day. So wanted to give congratulations and thanks to all our international nurses in advance of that. I don't see any hands raised for any questions or comments. Richard, thank you.
Yeah, it's really a comment and not a question. I think this is a really important item which we always take for granted, and it's been really difficult to maintain safe staffing over the past months, and actually longer than just the past month. So I just wanted to say that I think we've done an incredible job here.
Completely agree. I think to have to be proposing an assurance level of 6, given what we've been through in this last month, and indeed, as Richard says, for many months, I think that this is a real achievement. So yeah, absolutely. On that point, can I ask for people's agreement for level 6 assurance? Thank you very much. Then thank you, Jackie. We'll move on then to midwifery and Justine.
Thanks, Chair. So this is State Staffing Report for midwifery for March, with offering an assurance level of 6. Overall, you will see that we have achieved safe staffing levels on all of our shifts, and you can see that from the acuity that's been met prior to mitigation and the actions that have been taken to, when required, outlined in the report. We've maintained our sickness at around 6%, which is excellent, and the trend is downwards, and we're under trust target next month, so that will be positive to report. Vacancies and turnover is also down, You'll also note within the report that the fill rates for midwives is on the increase. However, we've got a lot of red across that chart around maternity support workers and MCAs as well. But we have had some successful recruitment last month, and I'll be able to update in next month's report how successful the offers have been. We've made it over above 10 offers. In terms of people that were expecting to join us, we had some delay in onboarding 6 midwives, and they did finally join us in April and the beginning of this month. And we've offered an additional 24 whole-time equivalent posts to our newly qualified midwives in September. You heard from Jess earlier, she's got lots of work to do later on this year, but we will be putting another half-time person alongside her, because obviously that workload would be significant, because we want to retain that group once we've onboarded them. Our maternity leave, just as a note, it's not within this report and I'll include it next month, our maternity leave within our staff group is starting to increase, and we're just tracking that through at the moment. It's sitting at about 5% at the moment. We haven't seen that for some time, and some of the what is perceived over recruitment that we're currently doing should offset that maternity leave. So generally overall a sustained and continuing improved position. So I'll pause there and take any questions.
Thank you, Justine. Any questions or comments for her? No, I don't see any hands. Thank you, Justine, again. And you know, this feeds very much from the story we had at the beginning of the board. Some real progress in this area, and it's great to see. Really, really great. So yeah, congratulations to the team. A proposed assurance level of 6. Are we happy to accept that? Thank you very much. Thank you, Justine. Right, then moving on to the next item is about the Remuneration Committee terms of reference. Rebecca, did you want to say something about this or?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As committee members will be aware, we approved these through the last trust board. Subsequent discussions that we've had have just reflected us the opportunity to give all of the non-executives the opportunity to take part at committee. We've added that to the committee membership. However, we have retained the same quorum so that we can make sure that conflicts of interest can be managed appropriately. So as a minor update to the last position, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's for approve. Oh, sorry, Tony.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I don't want to put a spanner in the works. I've just got a slight concern on the governance of this, because if the chair of the board is also the chair of the Remuneration Committee, and all the non-execs on the board are also on the Remuneration Committee, then I'm just seen in the past, the slight concern is who is holding that committee to account, because effectively it's the board, part of the board anyway, the one half of the unitary board, and I've seen it cause a difficulty in other places. I'm not saying it's wrong, because you can compose it as you wish, but perhaps if we do it this way, we just need to be slightly alert to the fact that who are we holding to account afterwards, because it's the same people. Well, anyway, I'll rest it there. Just a slight reservation about composition. That's all.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks, Tony. Just on that, it's very common for chairs to chair the Remuneration Committee. It's the consistent position across all of our system, and indeed with all of the remuneration committees that I've supported previously. Remuneration committees' decisions are subject to ratification at the board, so periodically a report will come back to board for approval so that we can manage that. If there are any particular conflicts of interest that we need to take account of, we will exclude the relevant individuals from the meetings to manage that proactively. As a number of colleagues on the gallery will be aware, we're careful and cognizant of those points.
Yeah, Tony, do you want to come back in?
I just think it's unique to the NHS, because the FRC recommends you don't do this in the commercial sector. So UK companies applying the corporate governance code in the UK will not have this arrangement. Now, that's not to say we can't have the arrangement. I'm just saying it's been identified in other sectors as sometimes problematic. But I'll rest there because I'm not too het up about it. Just saying, just a flag, that was all.
Just to flag, we do have that safety net with NHS England in respect of the outside appointments of non-executives themselves and also of the chair, and the associated remuneration sits externally.
Yes, I mean, certainly in my experience, I've seen, I think I've always seen the chair it, but I have seen both scenarios where all the non-execs were members, and that which we've had up till now, where only a small group of non-execs were the members. So I don't personally have a strong view either way, but I think in that discussion we had as a board, it was felt that it might be helpful. Up till now it's been very reliant on Julie, Simon and myself as the members, and it might be useful to expand it. So I think what I would suggest is that, given that this is the proposal, and given this is that came out of board initially, that I think I'd like us to probably proceed on this basis. Clearly, if we become aware, if the board becomes aware that this is causing any issues, obviously the board can reconsider this again and go back to the previous model or a whole new model. But I think certainly this came out of a conversation at board initially, this idea, and I don't see anyone else raising concerns. So thank you, Tony. We noted, and we'll keep an eye on it, I think is what we'll say. But I think I'd like us to go ahead with, can I have approval, please, for the changes of terms of reference? And we'll say we've already talked about the previous ones, but this one specifically about increasing the composition. I've had a thumbs up from Richard. I'll take that as a yes. Thank you very much. Therefore, we will say that has been passed. Right, we've just got a couple of minutes. I know Joe Ringshall from Healthwatch is on the call. Joe, I don't know if you wanted to had a comment or question for us just in the last couple of minutes. Joe, I can see you. You're on mute if you are speaking, but I can see you.
I think I just have to take my headphones off. I think it's my headphones. Can you hear me now?
We can, Joe. Please go ahead.
Yes, I was just saying there's a really interesting board, and I thought the presentation on the preceptorship in midwifery was really good. We do have one question which keeps coming up and again, and it may seem trivial to you, but it's about disabled parking at the Acute Hospital Trust site, and people are confused about it, particularly if they're parking where the barriers are raised. And is it okay if we tell people that if they go to the barrier and say, I'm a blue badge holder, then they'll let them out? Is that okay? Because it's confusing about how they actually get the free parking that they're entitled to. I mean, it's okay in the non-barriered places if there are disabled places parking available, but it is actually the barriered places, and we've had quite a few people raise it with us. So it's a small point, but people find it important.
Thank you for raising that, Joe. I don't know who of our exec colleagues would feel able to respond on that. Matthew, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So very happy to pick that up, Joe, with Scott Dickinson, our Director of Estates Facilities. If there's any specific examples that you've got by email communication, it'd be helpful if you could just drop that to me, and then I can follow it up with Scott. If that's helpful.
Sure, of course I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, Chair, just to tie up, shall we take that as an action, and then the output being that we can clarify on our website so that it's clarity for all of our population?
I think from what Joe is saying, it is about clarity so that people understand how to do it. So I think, yes, can we please put that on the action log? And as you say, we'll follow up on that. Joe, thank you for your question, and thank you for your attendance at board. It's always lovely to see you. On that basis, we didn't have any other business notified at the beginning of the meeting. Does anybody have any other burning issues they would like to raise now? Tina.
Sorry, I forgot to mention it in my slot earlier. Just some good news. We've been awarded a special recognition award from Working Well Worcestershire. which is an employer scheme run through the county council, and it's in recognition of the health and wellbeing offer that we've got for our colleagues, but all the work that we've been doing with other health and care sector providers across the county as well. So that was awarded to us last week.
Fabulous news, Tina. Thank you for sharing. This has been a lovely board in terms of good news stories. Clearly there are challenges, clearly there are things we're working on, but actually to get some external recognition on various things is lovely. So well done to the team for having put the pinwheel together, because that's clearly striking a chord with our people. Richard, you wanted to come in.
Just on that theme, Chair, it remiss of me not to point out to colleagues that our entries for our own staff awards went live this week, and within hours of publicising it in Worcestershire Weekly, we'd already received the first entries. So fingers crossed that will prove as successful this year as it did last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, a lovely thing, and yeah, will be a great way for the trust to celebrate at the end of the year. Right, so if there are no other comments, I'd like to thank you all for your attention. For members of the public on YouTube, we will be finishing proceedings here. For members of the board, we have a private meeting starting at 12:30. I haven't forgotten anything, have I, Rebecca? We haven't got corporate trustees.
No, you're fine.
I normally forget that, but no, okay, great.